Good morning, family. My name is Dee Waisaki, and I am a woman in long-term recovery. And what that means for me is that I haven't found it necessary to pick up a drink or a drug since February the 21st of 06, and for that I am truly, truly grateful. So I would like to welcome y'all, because we're running 2 minutes behind, and we have some amazing speakers here. Got some experience, strength, and hope up here. I would like to welcome you guys to the Reuniting Families Working with Children in Oxford House. I know that they want us to do some house cleaning, so go to the smoking areas. Please clean up after yourself. No vaping or smoking in the bathrooms or in your rooms, please. We are here to be the example of what it's like to be in Oxford House, and we want to replicate that throughout Seattle. I'm just going to kind of read on here about what we're going to kind of speak about. Many Oxford residents have young children. Some are living with relatives or other people, but may sometimes visit their parents in Oxford House. In some Oxford houses, children live there with a parent. The panel will discuss how Oxford houses with children work and what challenges they pose for the parent, the child, and the other Oxford House residents. They will also address how these houses coped during the pandemic and what, if any, adjustments need to be made. I would like to welcome, I gotta get my other notes here. You know, it's funny that I got asked to be on this panel. December of last year, I had the opportunity to be able to step up and be a parent to my grandchild. And I'm very grateful for that today, but what I found through that journey is what it would have been like if I was still living in an Oxford House, right? And the challenges. It was very challenging for me. It has given me a new sense and purpose on our parent and child homes, because we have men and children, and we have women and children. So I hope that y'all walk away with this full of energy and full of education, and are able to reunite those families, because it's very, very important. I'd like to introduce our first speaker, which is Courtney Ross. She is a resource coordinator in Illinois. She was born and raised in Lexington, Kentucky, graduated from Lafayette High School, got sober in Louisville, Kentucky. That's wrong. It's Louisville. It's Louisville. See, I'm from Texas. It's Louisville, Kentucky. She moved into her first Oxford House on April 4th, 2017. Her career with Oxford House began January the 15th, 2019. Since then, she has had the privilege to train and oversee several areas. Her goals in life are to be the very best that she can. She enjoys and appreciates her life today. The opportunity to participate in helping to change the lives of people have been so amazing and rewarding. Becoming a national certified peer recovery support specialist is just one of her professional achievements. Becoming a full-time parent is the biggest achievement. She enjoys reading, suspense novels, spending time with family, and loving on her son. Help me welcome Courtney Ross. We're going to introduce the experienced treatment home first.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Courtney, and I'm an alcoholic. My life-changing date is May 14th of 2016, and for that gift, I am eternally grateful. I just want to tell you a little bit about myself. That way I can get in my comfort zone, because if and when I stand in my own truth, there's nothing I can't make it through. I first heard about Oxford House while sitting in a SAP, substance abuse program. And this is always part of my story. There is a woman that came to deliver a message of hope about housing. And at that time in my life, I was 42 years old and I didn't have a pot to piss in, and wasn't nobody letting me throw it out their window anymore. All I knew is that I didn't want to drink anymore, I didn't want to smoke crack anymore, and I was tired of the lifestyle that was associated with those substances. So of course I did my interview over the phone, and I moved into my very first Oxford house April 4th of 2017. I remember that date the same way I remember my sobriety date. I have lived in many houses, many Oxford houses, and along the way, God has shown up and showed out. Life has shown up many, many times, and because of that family piece that Oxford House gives us, and that we encourage the individuals to create within each house, that family piece, I've made it through some things. I am that woman that walked out on my 3 children. My oldest daughter, thank God, my family and her dad's family was in her life. But of course, if there are any parents in here, you all know that our children are still affected. I am the mother of a set of twins, and when I tell you I pushed them out and I walked the fuck out, that's what I did. But God. I manipulated the situation and made sure I placed my black sons with some white folks so that they would come looking for me. And the older I got, the more fearful I got, because I was afraid them boys was going to come looking for me and I wasn't going to be ready. But God. That Ancestry.com stuff, them boys went on there and found their mother, and so 6 months ago I was reunited with my sons. And we are still getting to know one another. That's not even one of the promises. That's just a blessing from the God of my understanding, because He is in the restoration business. I am also the proud parent of, he is now 2 years old. He is not mine biologically, but this is another God thing. In December 20, I picked up a 6-month-old little boy just to babysit him. Several months later, I understood the assignment. Yeah. On my 5-year anniversary, May 14th, was our very first court date, and I left that courthouse with temporary sole custody. We continued to go back and forth in court and da-da-da-da-da. December 7th of last year, and keep in mind, all of this is happening while I am living in an Oxford house. Real life, okay? December 7th of last year, another date that I will remember, just as I will remember my life-changing date. The judge asked if I was ready to provide the care to this little boy until he was 18 years old. Yeah. And I'm talking about old garden variety crackhead right here. The same woman that walked out on her children. And what I'm saying is for someone. And to add to that, anyone sitting in this room is a miracle. Anyone sitting in this room ain't done nothing that I ain't done. And if you've done it, it don't matter. We felt the same. Misery, loneliness, confusion, anger, all of that. It don't matter how we got here. What matters is that our pain can allow us to bond, but please allow the provocation of growth to keep you bonded. I'm real grateful for my process. I've experienced things in my life in the last 6 years that my very first phone call was my regional manager and my friend Brittany. These are people that have walked through some things with me. Yeah. Do I keep going? Do I? What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do?
Okay, we're gonna share just a little bit of experience, strength, and hope from a gentleman. His name? Mitchell. I'm gonna do this right here.
Right
What's
here?
your name?
Blaze.
How old are you?
8.
That's Blaze.
Why do you think people live in an Oxford house?
To get off drugs.
What's your favorite thing about living in an Oxford house?
Free internet and going to house meetings.
What's your least favorite thing?
Nothing.
Nothing?
Yep.
How many Oxford houses have you lived in?
4.
How long have you lived in an Oxford house?
3 years.
What are some of the rules in Oxford House?
No drugs.
What did Oxford House do for you and your mommy?
Help us get our own house.
Okay. Out of the mouths of babes. Okay, so this is my +1. That's my Tatum's. What makes an Oxford house with children work? Again, I've lived in many Oxford houses, and children have come and gone. But my experience with raising my own son in an Oxford house has been, some days have been challenging. I'm just going to be honest, because I had no parenting skills, okay? And in my recovery, it has always been about me. And then God placed this precious boy in my life. But what I have found that works in an Oxford house, first and foremost, in the women and children houses or the dad and me houses, there has to be a special, a totally separate set of guidelines, you know, in all of our houses, but especially in the houses that are chartered for mommy and me and daddy and me, because it's a whole different ball game. You know, you've got CPS, you've got what if, you know, the parent returns to use, what happens to the child? And we also have to understand that, yes, it takes a village to raise a child, because on some days, on most days, I don't know where I would be without my sisters that live within my house. Are they responsible for child care? No. But will they ride for me and be like, Courtney, you need a break or what? Yes. Are they responsible to, you know, discipline my child? No. But there are some women in my house that I say, if you see Tatum's doing something, don't run and get me. Have a conversation with my son and let him know what's right and what's wrong. Because I need help. I need help. So in the houses that I've grown up in and in the region that I have worked in, we strongly suggest, you know, the parenting classes or proof thereof. And while I was going through the court system trying to obtain custody of Terry, that was a suggestion from my attorney, and I did it just because I knew that I didn't know how to be patient, loving, and tolerant. Even with a solid 12-step program of action, them children will do you some type of way, and I stand in my truth wherever I go. You hear me? I will look at my son, anyway, okay. I got a best friend that'll say, Tatum's, you can get these hands, bruh. You know what I'm saying? And it is what it is, okay? And she's joking, but at the same time, she's dead serious. Anyway, the parenting classes and the proof of completion of classes. And again, all of us called Oxford House and said that we would be willing to do whatever you people told us to do. Every one of us called Oxford House And we later find out after the interview and after the 30 days that a set of lips will say anything. But then that's when we go back to those interview etiquette questions. When we asked, if something is off and we need to place you on a contract or we need to hold you accountable, where do you stand with that? Are you willing? So that's where these parenting classes come in, because a lot of us have not been around our children in recovery. So a lot of us only know how to yell, scream, holler, and physically discipline. And I'm saying us, okay? And part of recovery is experiencing growing pains. Growing. What I've found to work within our houses with children is a designated play area. The house that I just moved out of in Leto, there's two common areas. Upstairs is one, that's the common area for everyone. One of the senior members decided that the common area in the basement should be converted to a toy room. And I looked at her like, damn, where'd you come up with that idea? You know, because it takes all of us in the house to have ideas and suggestions. And I was very, very grateful for that suggestion, because it was at a time where our house was having work done. So to remove the floating bar was not an issue. And there was carpet laid down. We went and bought a rug from Walmart that had, childlike things on it. Put toys in clothes baskets, and voila. Little things like that. And that also created an atmosphere for my son and I to come out of that damn bedroom from watching Coco Melon and PJ Masks and all that other shit. And yeah, somebody's relating to me. Okay. And engage with my child. Because otherwise, let me tell it, he was being a good boy because he was sitting in the bed looking at his tablet. That's the easier, softer way. And again, I stand in my truth wherever I go. So because my housemate suggested turning a common area into a designated play area, that forced me out of my comfort zone. So we learned and discussed colors and shapes and sounds, little things that we take for granted, but at certain points of our children's lives, we're supposed to nurture our children forever and ever. But I'm talking about those formative years, which is a word that I learned in parenting. We've got to teach them how to effectively communicate and teach them, educate them as well. So, the child being included in all the events. I used to be so mad that our house meeting was at 6 o'clock because Tatum's is not taking a nap at 6 o'clock. But guess what? My housemates would provide all the support that I needed. Tatum's would be passed around the room, or so-and-so would get up and make sure that Tatum's had yogurt. The house, the village, just. And eventually, because we've got to train a child, eventually, now Tatum's knows how to sit in a house meeting and mind his own business and leave us alone, as opposed to he would hear someone speak and make his way to that person as if they was talking to him. Now he understands that we are having a house meeting. Tatum's, I need you to sit over there. And it took forever. It took forever. And it's not perfect all the time, but I'm learning to teach my child appropriately, along with my housemates are reinforcing that. And last but not least, I want to go back to that children being included in all of our events. That's very important to me because Tatum's now has aunts and uncles from all kinds of states. We just had a retreat. My son wanted nothing to do with me. which was just fine because I was on the cooking crew. But, and our children get to experience a quality of life that we may or may not have ever experienced or was unable to do with our older children. Okay? And for those of us that have younger children and older children, my spirit is saying there is, my oldest daughter, Carolyn, sometimes is affected by me having a 2-year-old and me not have done with her what I'm doing with Tatum's. And she has every right to feel that way. So I create special time with Carolyn and Carolyn only. That is for somebody that is struggling with that piece right there. Housemates will be willing to help parent in the time of need. I know that's my experience. Not near one of them have left me for dead. You know, the house that I just moved out of, after driving all the way to Peoria and doing this and then picking Tatum's up from daycare and coming home, my housemate was, I'll take Tatum's to the park. Okay, here's his diaper. Yeah. For those of us that have children, I ask that we remind ourselves about, you know, our active addiction and how many things that we have lost out on and didn't get to experience. But I also want to remind you that we are now working on a clean slate, and we're going to mess up. But the one thing that we don't ever have to do is put one in us, because that cancels out everything that we're working on today. And again, for each and every one of you that are sitting in this room, you all are miracles, and welcome home.
Wow. Wow. That was some good stuff. Thanks for sharing your truth with us. Next we have Stacy Nichols. Stacy moved into her first Oxford House in 2014 in New Orleans, Louisiana. She opened Oxford House Marabou. Aha, did it. Nailed it. Good. The first woman and children's Oxford House in New Orleans. She wasn't a mother then, but in 2016 she became a mom. My son, her son, Dominic, is 6 years old and lived in Oxford House with her for the first 4 years of his life. Stacy has lived in Oxford House in 3 states and has opened houses in 4 states. She has been in West Virginia for the past 3 years. Dominic has helped to open houses, do car washes, and knows the parliamentary procedure better than most members. Stacy, come on up and share your story.
Good morning. My name is Stacy Nichols. I'm a mother in long-term recovery, and what that means for me is that Coco Melon and PJ Masks have not driven me to use alcohol or drugs since March 11th of 2019. So yeah, I think I have a very broad perspective being a woman in Oxford House, because I did move into my first Oxford House before I became a mom. And so during that time, Oxford House taught me how to be a woman in recovery. You know, I got to learn how to get my footing in recovery as a woman without a child. I'm kind of glad it happened that way for me, you know. So I got my footing in recovery, and then in 2016, I became a mom. I moved back into Oxford House and found out that that is a very, very different experience, living in Oxford House with my child. So I'm going to go to the next slide so y'all can see, because this picture is the embodiment of his personality. this is Dominic, and we're actually at a fundraiser at an Oxford House in Beckley, West Virginia. So Dominic, when I had Dominic, I had suffered really bad from postpartum depression. And so it was very, very challenging for me. And I'm really grateful that I lived in an Oxford House during that time, because I don't know that I would have made it through that if I was living on my own. So I'm very grateful for that. So the first time I lived in Oxford House, I learned how to be a woman in recovery. And the second time I lived in Oxford House, I learned how to be a mother in recovery. So Dominic suffers from eczema really bad. And so when Dominic was a baby, he didn't know how to talk yet, so he couldn't tell me I'm itchy, so he would cry throughout the night. And we lived in an Oxford House with 9 other women and 1 other child. So it was very difficult on my housemates. It was very difficult on me as a mom, because I knew, shh, be quiet. You're waking everyone up. And I'm just very grateful that I lived in an Oxford House where it was a very healthy, unified home. And that house worked with me to create an environment where I could navigate that situation, and I could grow, and I could learn how to be a mom and stay sober and everything like that. So what we're going to talk about, I'm going to pull up my notes. I have notes on top of this. So setting boundaries for a harmonious home. So we're going to talk a little bit on how to deal with undisciplined or unruly children. And they did pick me for this portion on purpose, because Dominic is a free spirit. Very free spirit. He kind of just goes his own way. So what I've noticed from a mother's standpoint, from one, being a woman in an Oxford House with living with other women and their children, and then living in an Oxford House with my child, there are a few key factors that will affect a child's behavior. One of them that impacts it the most is their environment. So we got to understand, women are coming into the house from various different situations. They're not all the same. They could have some trauma. Maybe there was some inconsistency in their housing. They might have moved from place to place. They could have been in foster housing. They could have went between mom, dad, grandma. We don't really know. So that's going to impact their behavior. But the environment that they are currently in right now is going to impact their behavior the most. So one way to deal with unruly children is, one, create a stable environment. If your house is kind of unstable, or there's a lot of people coming and going, there's no routine, there's no, nothing for them to anticipate, that is going to impact their behavior. There's no boundaries set in place, there's no rules set in place for them. That's going to create an environment where they're not going to know how to behave, and they're going to act out. So setting boundaries for a harmonious home. The first way to do that is the paperwork. We have paperwork at all the houses when you move in that mothers have to read and fill out. We have the newcomer packets. One of the things I love about Oxford House is that the model and the rules and the guidelines were developed by us, by people who live in Oxford houses. It wasn't some program manager somewhere who read about substance use disorder in a textbook and developed a program. These are guidelines that work because they were developed over years of people who were laying the track as we're going, right? I kind of feel like that's the description of my parenting. I'm laying the track as I don't know what I'm doing. But yeah, so first we've got to follow the guidelines. Make sure that the parents who are moving in and the women who don't have children that are moving in understand what the guidelines are, what the boundaries for that house are, and what the rules are. Make sure you're enforcing those. Because if you hand somebody a newcomer packet and these are the rules in that newcomer packet, but no one in the house is following those rules, that's not really creating a stable, consistent environment. So like the residents, the adults who live in the house probably aren't going to behave properly if that's going on, right? So secondly, you want to set boundaries as individuals. The parent, me, myself, I need to set boundaries for my son. I need to let the house know what the boundaries are for me. Like, for example, for me, I don't really like other people correcting my child. it kind of makes me mad. If my child's doing something that you don't like, you can come talk to me about it and I will correct my child. But it's for me to communicate that to the house. Like, hey, if he's doing something to bother you, come talk to me, I'll deal with it, But if you don't have that conversation and you don't set that boundary and communicate that, no one's gonna know that that's a boundary for you. And then as a house, set boundaries with the parent for the child. I don't want him coming in my bedroom. Dominic will walk right into your bedroom. He does not care. But I have to, make sure that I'm keeping an eye on him and not letting him run all over the house. So the next way is to have some compassion, empathy, and care for one another. You guys gotta understand, we're all moving into Oxford House. We're trying to figure life out again. We're trying to learn how to live. We're trying to learn how to be an adult. And we're trying to learn how to be a parent. Doing that without a child is very, very challenging in and of itself. And throwing a child in the mix, it's a total game changer. So try to have some empathy and compassion for these women who are coming in with their children. They may need to take some parenting classes. Sit down and have that conversation with them. I had to take parenting classes. I still take parenting classes. There's a organization in West Virginia where I can go anytime I want. It's a support group, and they give classes. And I dip in there from time to time. I don't live in an Oxford House anymore. Me and my child have our own place, but I still need that support. I'm still a woman in recovery with her child. So one is know the rules, communicate the rules, enforce the rules, follow the rules, and set boundaries. Create a stable environment, not just for that child, but for yourself. If you have a peaceful, unified, serene home, that child within a couple of weeks is going to fall right in line with everybody else in the house. So the number one factor is create a good environment. All right, so now we're going to talk about, let's say we have a moment, child's being really, really disruptive and unruly. What are we going to do in the moment? Well, for one, the parent should take the lead on disciplining and correcting their child. It's not for the house. The house is not the parent of that child. So what you do is you approach the parent and talk to the parent. And if for some reason that parent isn't parenting their child in that moment, then you'll need to have a conversation in a house meeting about parenting classes, okay? Never raise voices. There should be no screaming or raising voices or fighting, especially in front of the child. So if you guys are going to have a house meeting to talk about some unruly behavior with the child really shouldn't be present in that discussion. Child should be off in another bedroom, and it should be the adults speaking about that behavior. If you guys are addressing behavior for the parent, that conversation should not occur in front of the child, okay, no matter what the age is. So what about age limits? That's always a fun topic. So my take on age limits is, one, should there, hang on. There we go. One, should there be an age limit? I think so. I think there should be age limits. But what age limits look like, it's a very fluid concept because there's no cookie cutter thing for, it's going to be case by case. So really, you need to take a look at the situation, sit down as a house, and make an informed, thought-out decision when you're talking about an age limit of a child. Like, what are some of the situations that can happen if we allow a person of this age to come in? For example, let's say you have a 16-year-old child living in the house, and another woman is applying with another 16-year-old child. Are those two, is there a potential for a relationship between those two individuals? So there's really no clear-cut right answer. The only right answer is an informed, discussed, thought-out decision from the house on that. And if you need to contact your outreach worker and get some input on that, I would include your outreach worker or your chapter officers in that decision as well if you feel like you need to. All right, so next we're going to talk about, so I'm finished now. Thanks, guys.
You did good. Stacy was going to take us on out for the day. Next, we have Heather Lee. Heather Lee moved into Oxford House of Belladonna in Shreveport, Louisiana, March 17, 2018. She became an employee of Oxford House on October the 15th, 2019. She is the outreach worker for Alexandria and Lake Charles, Louisiana, and she is certified in peer support specialist and a mother to her 9-year-old son Blaze, which is the gentleman that you saw in the beginning, and a 9-year-old bonus daughter, Erilyn.
All right. Hey, y'all, I'm Heather. I am a woman in long-term recovery, and what that means for me is I haven't found it necessary to use a drink or a drug since October 27th of 2017. It's crazy seeing that video of Blaze because that's from like last year, and then this picture, he's like just grown up over the past year. So a little bit of backstory about myself. I lost custody of Blaze at the beginning of 2017 while I was in jail, and I got out of jail like within a couple of days, and Blaze was in the state custody, or he was in state's custody. Losing my son a few days before I got out of jail, like, I didn't really know how to cope with it, and that was not enough from keeping me from going and relapsing. And for the next 6 months, I was, out there. So I ended up going to jail October 27th, and I got court ordered to go to treatment. And the lady, or my caseworker at the treatment center I was at, she asked me if I, ever heard of Oxford House, and I had a little bit. And I was telling her, I was like, well, I really need somewhere to go to be able to get custody back of my son. And she said, well, they have women and children's houses. I didn't know that. I had no idea that there was a place that, I could go to and work on getting custody back of Blaze. So when she told me this, we set me up an interview, and I still wasn't really sure if that's what I wanted to do. I ended up getting out of treatment. I was accepted into Belladonna, but I went home for a couple of days to my mama's, and I was like, this is not going to work. So I got right over to that Oxford House, and what I found there was these women who were so welcoming. They just made me feel right at home. Within about 6 months, I had full custody of Blaze back, and I hadn't had him for a little over a year, and so and the whole time before that, I was using. So I really needed to learn how to be able to be a mother to Blaze again, or just to be a present, sober mother to him. And that's what I found at that house. These women, they helped me through everything. And they were there doing the exact same thing I was trying to do. Me and one of my roommates, Celeste, we ended up she got her son Gage back, and I got Blaze back right at the same time. Blaze is a little hyper. He has ADHD. So it was a struggle sometimes. Kind of like somebody said, about your child kind of being disruptive in the house. I felt like Blaze was bothering people, and that wasn't the case. They loved my son like he was their own, and it was just crazy to me that these women that I had not known for that long welcomed me and my child into this house and loved us where we both were at, because he had a lot of trauma too. And, they loved us through it, and it was just a really great thing. About to cry. But, so we don't live in an Oxford house anymore. Blaze still loves Oxford House drama. He wants to go to the house meetings and steal. I have to explain to him, you can't really go to this house meeting. There's a lot of stuff going on. He's like, that's why I want to go. I guess he's nosy just like me. Anyways, okay, so my topic is how to explain expulsions to children. And when I did this one last year, and what I think of explaining an expulsion to a child, it's a child that is living in the house and someone else is being expelled. I mentioned it to Vanessa, and she was like, oh, well, I think of it about the child's mother being expelled. So I put a few bullet points for each perspective. So if your child is still going to be living in the house and they may have gotten close with someone in the house, and the one thing that I remember, the most, just this one time, that I remember having to explain the first expulsion to Blaze, it was my friend Dee who got expelled for disruptive behavior. And they had became very close, very close. Her daughter would always come over. We'd always go do stuff together, and so I had to explain to him at that time, and he was probably 6, I guess, in a way that he could understand that this is why this happened, and, try to comfort him because that affected him. He had me, just taken out of his life, his dad kind of in and out. And so that really did affect him. And I always kept it age appropriate. Let's see. And I was always honest with him. I want him to understand, that this is what I have done in the past, and I have worked on myself, and I have moved forward to become a better person, a better mother. And I want him to see that, because I don't want him to go down the road that I went down. Everybody has a different opinion. Should you be honest with your child? Should you not be honest with your child about things in your past? I prefer to be honest with my child, but also keeping it age appropriate to him. And then I would let him know, like, negative actions have negative consequences. And thank you for changing that, because I couldn't figure out how to word it. I want him to see, if you do something that you should not do, that there are negative consequences for those actions. I want him to be better than me, as I'm sure we all want for our children. And so he needs to understand that, this is what happens when you do bad things. Okay, so these 3 are more so for a child that is being expelled with their parent. I never really thought about that, because I feel like it should be the parent's responsibility to explain it to their own child. However, that may not always be the case. So I did want, to give y'all some examples of that. So we want to make sure that we reassure the child that it is not their fault. A lot of times we put our kids through so much, and they feel like that it is their fault, that these are why these things are happening. So we just want to make sure that we reassure them that it is not whatsoever their fault. We want to make sure we help find resources for the parent and the child. Not only as they're being expelled, we want to do that while they're in the house too. So it's a good idea to have community resources for parents and children in women and children's houses, and chapter officers be aware of what services your area offers for parents. So I was kind of dealing with the little situation in Lake Charles, and this girl, she just had a brand new newborn baby, and at this time, she needs a little bit more help than Oxford House can provide her. So what we did is we reached out to it's like a long-term residential treatment facility or something, but it's for women and children. And so we got her interview set up, and she is so thankful because had we not done all this stuff for her, she may have been out on the streets with that child. And she was kind of hesitant at first, and I got a message yesterday that she is going to go, and she's going to do the 6 months. And then, I told her, in 6 months, come back. We want you here. But there's just some other things that she needs to work on. Okay, and so we want to make sure that we have the parent fill out the parent agreement. I was not aware that we had one of these. And this is, I did look over it, but so it mainly has like emergency contacts, what to do in a situation if you're being expelled, where should your child go, if you relapse, like different things like that. And that one was approved, and is it on the?
It's on the Google Drive. It's
Okay. Oh, they're going to tell you about that next. My bad. Okay. But, so yeah, I love women and children's houses. They hold a special place in my heart. I will forever be grateful to that first Oxford house that I moved into and the ones after. And that's it.
It is very, very important that we have some kind of action plan that if the mother returns to use or drinking, that we have a plan of action for both parent and child. However that works within your house. I know that we have some forms on the Google Drive that Ashley is going to tell us about here in just a little bit. Thank you, Heather, so very much. Miss Ashley Wilson is an outreach worker in North Arizona. She moved into her first Oxford House Sakani, in December 2019. She has been employed since June 2020. She has a beautiful 2-year-old daughter, Arabella, and she has certifications in peer support, mental health first aid, and trauma-informed care. Help me welcome Miss Ashley.
Hi guys, thank you. My name is Ashley Wilson. I'm a woman in long-term recovery. What that means for me is I haven't felt it necessary to pick up a drink or a drug since June 14th of 2019. Thank you. I was really excited to be chosen for this panel because most of my recovery journey and most of my journey as a mother has been in an Oxford house. The day that I got clean was the day that I was arrested in Phoenix, Arizona, and when I was booked into jail, I found out I was pregnant. I think I was about 3 months pregnant when I got booked into jail, and I went through a couple months in jail, and they sent me to treatment. And when I got out of treatment, I was sent to a different sober living home. And by that time, I was probably 7 months pregnant, and I wasn't really sure where I was going to go from there. The area that I live in, I had never heard of Oxford House. Oxford House was pretty new up there. At that time, there were only a couple of houses in the area that I had lived in. And so I was kind of on this time constraint to figure something out for by the time my daughter came. And you know, I'm 6 months clean. I'm working a part-time job. I really don't know how to live life. I don't know. You know, I'm not super solid in my recovery. I'm going to meetings and doing everything that's suggested of me, but I I definitely didn't have a strong enough foundation, recovery foundation, to be able to move out on my own, let alone could I afford it. So I was praying on it, and I was reaching out to a bunch of people in the rooms, and I heard about an Oxford house that was opening up for women with children. Now, I'd never heard of Oxford House. I didn't know what to expect, but I knew that, okay, cool, like I found somewhere that I can go. I did an interview on the phone with the outreach worker that was working up there at the time, and I got accepted, and I moved into Prescott Valley's first women and children's Oxford House in that area on the day that it opened. So I was probably 8 months pregnant when I moved in, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna move into this house for a couple of months, get on my feet, figure something out, and I'll be gone, in a few months. And I'll never forget it. Like the moment I walked through those doors, those girls told me, welcome home. It was this beautiful house, nothing like what I was used to. I had my daughter about a month later. I remember those girls helping me give her first bath. I didn't know anything about babies or about being a mother, and I found myself surrounded by women who were there for me, by mothers, who had gone through the things that I was going through, and by strong women in recovery. So it was all of these things that I needed and that I wanted around me. Let me pull up my notes here. So I'm pleased to say that Oxford House Secani is still probably our strongest women and children's house in that area. It's a great house that's set up really well for children to live in it. And since then, we've opened up 4 other women and children's houses in that area. And it's been just an incredible thing to be a part of. Let's see, so we're gonna talk a little bit about guidelines and chartering a women and children's house. So this is an example that I have that we use in Arizona. These are the guidelines that we use in Arizona. I understand that they might differ from area to area, but they work really well for us, so I wanted the opportunity to go over them. This can be found in your Google Drive in the paperwork, forms, and documents folder, and it's just in that house paperwork generic folder. And the guidelines can be found there, as well as the parent contract that we talked about a little bit earlier. And I'll just kind of go through these. The first guideline talks about the difference between a child who visits for less than 4 nights out of the week. They're considered a visitor of the house rather than an actual resident of the house. Our age limit in Arizona is 10 years old. No more than 1 child per parent. A parent with 2 children may be considered if both children are under the age of 3 and the room that they will occupy is of adequate size. So this is definitely something that we've kind of adopted in my area, just because it's hard to have, it's hard to find a big enough bedroom to suit a mother or a father with two children, unless they're very young. No more than 4 total children will live in the house at one time. We charge $25 per week extra in addition to the parents' EES. The children will share a single room with their parent rather than occupy a chartered bed. Single rooms designated for parent and child can be occupied by an adult with no children, but must be vacated when a parent and a child move in unless there are no open beds in another room. So this is something that we definitely have adopted in my area as well. Sometimes, the need varies from time to time. So sometimes you've got a bunch of women who are applying who have children, and sometimes there's not so many. So we want to make sure that we're meeting the current need. And we'll talk a little bit about that in the next slide, about, filling that bed rather than going and changing the charter. Pregnant women will move into the parent-child room after giving birth, and that goes in my area, that goes the same for women who are reunifying with their children through DCS. Refusal to accept a parent and a child because a member with no child wants to keep their single room is a violation of Tradition 1. This guideline talks about reading and signing the parent contract. No significant others are allowed in bedrooms, or no significant others are allowed to come spend the night. This is very important, and it's very, there's no gray area with it, right? And in my area, it's very important to us that be a safe place, and like another panelist talked about, creating a structured environment where the child feels safe, and there's nothing that could be misinterpreted. And we seem to find that these kind of guidelines make it for more of a family environment. And then, of course, no sexual activity is allowed on the property. We also wanted to talk about changing guidelines while children are visiting. We've got a lot of houses where, a lot of our men's houses, they'll have their kids come visit on the weekends or come spend a few nights at the house throughout the week. And it's been most successful that house adopt these guidelines while children are present, so that when a child comes over to visit their parent or their mom or their dad, that they can feel safe in the house that they're visiting. All right, so let's talk about the charter. This is my daughter. Her name's Arabella. How many residents with children should live in a house? So there's some things that we kind of want to take into consideration when we're making this decision for how many single rooms does the house have. So sometimes we get lucky and we find a house that has, 4 or 5 single bedrooms, and we can comfortably accommodate, maybe 2 or 3 mothers in that house. Common areas, it's good to have two living rooms, or a living room and a play area, a nice backyard that's hopefully fenced in, a dining area somewhere where the mom or the father and their child can go and sit down and eat, rather than sitting in the living room and getting everything all dirty. And then, like we talked about, a backyard, somewhere where they can go outside and play and get out of the house. Sometimes, like we've got women and children's houses that vary. So some of them have 5 single bedrooms and some of them have 3 single bedrooms, but we always want to make sure that there's a single bedroom left for those seasoned members, so that they have somewhere that they can graduate to. Somewhere that they can move into after they've been there for a while and become a core member of the house. Changing the charter. So we really want to think about long-term viability rather than responding to the current need. So that's part of the guidelines that we talked about on the previous slide, is that just because a single mother has moved into a single bedroom that was meant for women with a child, we don't need to change the charter. So we want to really think about what's the long-term viability of that house, rather than, okay, well, we're comfortable with where we're at right now with these women that are in the house. Let's put in for a charter change. And I think that's all I have. Thank you guys for letting me share.
Thank you so much. It's very, very important that we talked about the stability of a child, that when we're talking about changing these charters, that we're also not thinking about a situational scenario, right? That if you decide you want to change your home to a women and children's home, then let's make that duration long-lasting, because we've had similar situations to where we've changed the charter for 3 months, the next time we're changing it back. We can't do situational. We can find them a different home to go to. I would like to next welcome Miss Tylene Kenyon. Am I saying that right? Tylene. See, I said Tylene moved into her first Oxford house in Seattle in 2014. She has lived in a few other houses to help with stabilization and support. She has served as a chapter HSR in Auburn. After finding out she was pregnant, she moved with her daughter to a women and children's house in Yakima? Yakima. Nailed it. She currently lives in a women and children's house in Tacoma. Yeah. All right. With her 3-year-old daughter. She is currently the chapter co-chair and is going to school for substance use disorder counseling. Tylene, would you come share with us?
Okay. My name's Tylene, and I'm an alcoholic. Hi. So I moved into my first house in Seattle in 2014 when my son was a baby. I went to treatment, and some people came in and talked about Oxford, and I blew it off. Like, I already have a house to go back to. I have a baby. I have to go back to work. I don't know what's going to happen with my marriage at the time. And after 24 hours of being back home, I decided this is not going to work for me. And I didn't know that there was such a thing as a women and children's house. So I told my parents, I'm moving into an Oxford house, and I need my son to stay here with you. And so that's what I did. And they were not happy about that because they thought that I was just abandoning my child with them. And it turned out to be the best decision that I ever made. I was able to spend as much time as I could with him, and then per the residential schedule that I had with my parents, after 1 year, he was able to come and spend the night with me. The house that I was living at they decided before I had moved in that they were a no children's house, like no children overnight. And that didn't affect me until I was able to have my child overnight, and I asked them to change it. And I didn't get the majority vote, so I moved to a different house where I could have him overnight. It wasn't a women and children's house. It was just a more accommodating house for what I needed. And it was in a shared room, so I got lucky. I had a roommate she was willing to be okay with a 2-year-old being in the room with us, 3 days a week. So I, decided I was ready to move out, and about 6 months later, I went back out, and I stayed out for a long time, and I gave my son back to my parents. And I didn't see him for almost a year and a half. And it never occurred to me. I knew that I was going to have to go back to treatment because that's the only way that I know how to get back on my feet is to go back to treatment, start over, start from square one, and then go to AA and move into Oxford. That's the recipe that works for me to stay sober. So when I got out of treatment, again, I still wasn't able to see him because they made our residential schedule was very strict. So I moved to Yakima, and I got pregnant with my daughter. And I was living at a women and children's house there without any children. And I lived in every single room of that house because I was a single person living in a women and children's house, and I had to make room for women with children, and I was a single person, so I was constantly moving around. And it was a struggle to be around other women's children and not have my own with me, knowing that, I was missing him so much. But then I got pregnant with another with another child. And I relapsed when I was pregnant with her. And this is the longest period of sobriety that I've had in 4 years. My clean day is 5/11/22. Thank you. So I moved into the house that I live at. Actually, I moved into Oxford again about 6 months ago. 6 months ago, I've lived at the current house I'm at for 4 months. I had to transition to a house that had more space because the house I was at was at their children's capacity, and I was only able to have her 3 nights a week, and I needed to have her with me full time, and I needed to be in a room where I could have my son come and visit me on the weekends, because that's what this program has given me, is I can see my son again. And, my family, they don't trust me, but they know that Oxford works for me, and that when I'm in Oxford, I'm not using, and that I'm a better person when I live in Oxford. My son's dad, he also lived in Oxford for a long time. He went to World, he was chapter chair and all that. So the only reason why he trusts me to have our son is because I live in Oxford, because he knows that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing if I'm still a resident there. And it is a struggle living with a 3-year-old that she doesn't understand personal space. She likes to go in everybody's rooms, and she likes to be a part of everybody's life and conversation. And we're working on not going into people's bedrooms, and she's pretty good about knocking before she wants to go in somewhere. And I've lived at a house where, like, I didn't feel like me and my child were welcome. I felt like she was a nuisance to everybody, and I didn't feel like people were very helpful. And that's why I ended up moving to the house I'm at now. And it's been amazing. We have like 5 new people in like the last 2 weeks. So it's been a big transition period for us. But the group of women that we have now, they're so helpful with my daughter. And I didn't raise my son. My dad did. And so, like, I have an almost 9-year-old son, but this is the first time that I'm doing this parenting thing full time without, a grown-up telling me what to do. I am the grown-up. And I don't always know, what I'm doing. I don't know what's best. I have a really hard time disciplining her, because I didn't like the way that my parents, like a lot of our parents, they did what they could. And I'm trying to break that cycle. And, so far, the one thing that I've done different is moving to Oxford and get sober and work a program of recovery. When I lived in Yakima, I stayed sober for like 7 months, but I wasn't working a program, and I was just living in Oxford. So it takes more than just living in Oxford to have this thing called recovery, and to be able to have our children part of our lives, and to move forward. So this time, I'm living in Oxford, I'm working a program, and I'm going to school. Yeah. When I was using, or when I was clean and then I relapsed, I had a really good job. I had an amazing career, and I gave it away because I couldn't keep it up anymore. And I didn't know what I was going to do with the rest of my life. I've been a stay-at-home mom for the last 3 years, and that's pretty much what kept me sick, was just, I got to stay at home and just stay sick. And now, it was when I was in treatment. I was like, man, I have a record. What kind of job can I get with a record? And I was like, probably a substance use counselor. Most of them have records. So, and everyone's told me, for the last 10 years, like how good I would be at something like that, but I never put any serious thought into it. And I'm so excited that this is going to be the path that I take. And I'm so excited that in just like the 4 months that I've lived in this chapter, that I'm the chapter co-chair, I was asked to speak at World. Like, I was not expecting that. And I'm a seasoned member at my house. In just the 4 months I've been there, I can honestly say I'm a seasoned member at that house. And I love it. That's it. That's all I got.
So we have ran over a little bit. We have ran over time, not just a little bit. We usually have some time for questions. Find your panelist. If you have questions for us, please grab a hold of one of us and let us know. We have Courtney, Stacy, Ashley, Heather, and Tylene. Thank y'all very much.